Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's episode of The Global Context, where we delve into the complex and often intertwined threads of international affairs. I'm your host, Alvin, and today we have a particularly significant story to unpack. It's a story that could redefine geopolitical dynamics and challenge long-standing policies, one that involves Russia, Cuba, and the United States in a tripartite dance of diplomacy, economics, and strategic posturing. On Sunday night, aboard Air Force One, President Donald Trump made a statement that caught the attention of international observers and policymakers alike. He announced that he has no objection to a sanctioned Russian oil tanker delivering fuel to Cuba. This position comes despite the ongoing U.S. oil blockade that has significantly strained Cuba's economy and infrastructure. The tanker in question, the Anatoly Kolodkin, carrying approximately 730,000 barrels of oil, is expected to reach Cuba's port of Matanzas imminently. This development marks a significant shift in the U.S. stance toward Cuba, especially given the context of a deepening humanitarian crisis on the island. The blockade, aimed at pressuring the Cuban government, has resulted in severe shortages, blackouts, and mounting public unrest. President Trump's comments represent a notable departure from previous enforcement policies, which have historically aligned with a hardline approach towards Havana. To fully grasp the implications of this event, it's essential to understand the historical backdrop. The relationship between the United States and Cuba has long been fraught with tension. Under the Trump administration, these ties further deteriorated as sanctions tightened, building on efforts from prior administrations to isolate Cuba. These policies were designed to coerce political change in Havana, but have instead exacerbated economic difficulties for the Cuban populace. Cuba's reliance on imported oil has been a critical vulnerability. Traditionally, the island has depended heavily on Venezuela for its energy needs. However, Venezuela itself is embroiled in economic turmoil, compounded by U.S. sanctions, leaving Cuba in a precarious position. The arrival of a Russian tanker bearing sanctioned oil represents a significant breach of the blockade, signaling Russia's willingness to step in as a lifeline to Cuba. This move is emblematic of Moscow's broader strategy to assert influence in the Western Hemisphere, challenging U.S. dominance and potentially reshaping alliances. The geopolitical weight of this decision is profound. It begs the question, could this signal a crack in the U.S. blockade strategy, or is it an isolated incident born of humanitarian necessity? The answer to this could redefine how sanctions and their enforcement are perceived globally. If the United States allows the oil to be unloaded without interference, it might set a precedent for other nations to follow suit, invoking humanitarian grounds to circumvent U.S. policies. Domestically, the implications are equally significant. President Trump's comments might alienate hardline factions within U.S. politics that view any concession to Cuba as a sign of weakness. This could have ramifications for domestic support and political capital, especially among anti-Castro constituents who have long advocated for stringent measures against the Cuban government. For Cuba, this oil shipment offers immediate relief. It has the potential to stabilize power grids, mitigate the economic collapse, and potentially avert further social upheaval. However, it is also a temporary solution to a much larger problem. Without a sustainable resolution to the island's energy crisis, such shipments will only provide short-term relief. Looking ahead, this episode could reshape U.S. foreign policy dynamics in the Western Hemisphere. With global energy markets in a state of volatility, the implications extend beyond just Cuba. If the Anatoly Kolodkin's mission is successful, it could complicate Washington's leverage over Havana and strain relations with allies who are similarly enforcing sanctions against Russia. Moreover, it has the potential to escalate U.S.-Russia tensions, as Moscow continues to leverage such moves to undermine American isolation efforts and project power on the global stage. In conclusion, while the immediate focus remains on the humanitarian relief this oil shipment could provide to Cuba, the broader implications are far-reaching. They touch on the intricacies of international diplomacy, the balance of power, and the future of sanctions as a tool of foreign policy. As we watch the Anatoly Kolodkin's journey, we are reminded of the delicate interplay between national interests and global responsibilities. It is a story that underscores the complexity of geopolitics in a rapidly changing world, and one that we will continue to follow closely. Thank you for joining me today on The Global Context. Until next time, stay informed and thoughtful in your engagement with these pressing global issues.